Okay, I'm just going to talk you through how to go and test your multicart now that it's finished. So we need two things for this, obviously. We need our finished multicart and we need our multimeter. Now the multimeters, we're not, there's all sorts of neat things you can do with a multimeter, but all we're really going to do with this is we're going to test for shorts and we're going to test that the resistor network resistor is wired up correctly. So if we have a look at my multimeter here, all I'm doing here is I'm setting it round to the resistance testing, and on my particular one here, let's see, it's a bit hard to do this two hands, I'll get somebody to help me with this probably. Anyway, as you see, the nice thing about this is it's got a little audible signal, see, like that? It's useful for telling me there's a short in the system. Okay, so if we beep, we know there's like a direct line between 2 points. Okay, let's go. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch all these dip switches to the off position. So depending on your switch, I don't know if you probably can't see on my one, we've actually got on-off labels. So basically I'm going to make sure everything's in the off position. Okay, now this lets me check to see if there's any shorts in the system. So what I'm going to do here is, I'm just going to hold that there on my little clip so you can see what I'm doing, hopefully. There we go, put that down. There we go. Okay, now get my multimeter, set it so that it makes a noise if there's any shorts in the system. Now I'm just going to check. Now if you have a look at this, I don't know if hopefully you've had a look at the diagrams and the rest of the tutorial, but basically there's 5 volts coming up this side of the system, and the ground line is over on this side of the system. Now the first thing you want to make sure is there's no shorts between here and here, okay? If that's beeping, you know, that's bad, and you're going to fry something either on the board or on your computer when you turn it on. So that's the very first thing you want to check. No shorts between 5 volts and ground. Next thing we're going to do is go and have a look at our top pins here. Now what we should find is there's no, now if you remember we've wired up these top pins here. There should be top right here. Now this one's supposed to be, okay, there should be a short there because your top right pin is where the voltage feed is to the socket. So that's what we want, not a noise there. There's 5 volts here, great. This one here, because the dip switch is off, there shouldn't be any noise. Okay, so there's no, see how I'm holding on the 5 volts here? So there's no connection between 5 volts and this one. Same for that, same for that, same for that, same for that. Okay, cool, so we know there's no shorts there. Alright, now what can we do? Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to change my settings slightly, and I'm going to check the network resistor. Let's see if we can push this over here. Now, I want to make sure that there's 22. Oops. I want to make sure there's 22,000 ohms worth of resistance between each of these 5 pins here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the ground signal, because that tells me that my pull down resistor network is working. Okay, so what I'm going to do on my multimeter here, oops, go over here, and I'm going to change this to the 200,000 ohms range, and this should, and what we should find is. It's going to be a little bit tricky. Let's see, I need 3 hands for this. If I balance that there, it's not going to sit there. Okay, hang on. Try this, put that there. Now, what I'm looking for is if I go from here to here, oops. Right, you see on the display here how it says 21.8, 21.9. That's pretty close to 22. That's what we want. We want 22,000 ohms. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for on my multimeter, and I'll just show you where I'm testing that over here on the actual circuit. So again, what I'm testing for here is these top 5 address pins. So not the top right one, because that's a voltage feed, but because these switches are off, there should be 22,000 ohms between here and here. So between this pin and the ground signal, test that, yep, 22. Between this pin and the ground signal, 22. This pin, ground signal, 22, this pin, ground signal, 22, this pin, ground signal, 22. Okay, so I know my ground lines are all working correctly, that's fine. Now I'm just going to do a quick test. I'm going to switch all these dip switches to the on position. Now what that should do is that should give me a direct connection from here to these top 5 address pins. So I'm going to change my multimeter back to my beep mode. Hopefully you can hear the beeping there. And I'm just going to check, and what I should find now is between 5 volts and the address line I should now get a beep. Remember, the first time we tested it when these switches were off there was no beep, but now it's on, it's a direct connection, so I've got a beep here, got a beep here, beep here, beep here, beep here. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so I know that works. So I know the dip switches basically work when they're off. I've basically got a ground signal on these top 5 address lines, and when they're on, I've got 5 volts on these top 5 address lines. So I know that's working correctly. Okay, let me just check my little checklist here and just make sure there's nothing else I've forgotten to do. I think there were a couple more things. Let's see. Yep. Check the plus 5 volts. Right. No, that's everything checked. Okay. So basically, that's looking pretty good. The only other thing I will say is, which I probably should have said earlier, is when you wire up your 5 volts and your ground signals on the back. I didn't do this in the original build, but see how I've got a bit of tape under here? This is my ground line, and it's kind of going across. This is 5 volts across here. That's my ground line there, which is going up to my common pin up here. Yep, I don't know if you can see there, but I left the wire a bit long, and that wire is really nearly dragging on here. Now that's an example of something that will give you a short between your ground line and your 5 volts, and that could blow your system up. So you don't want that. So I possibly should have put it down before I started, and I should have trimmed this wire a bit shorter. But in any case, I've just slipped another bit of tape under here, so that if this thing does just happen to clip across the top of here, it's not going to be a short because there's some tape in the way. Okay, so that's pretty much all we need to check. I can actually be pretty confident the thing is going to work, or at least not blow everything up when I put it back in now. Paranoid testing, so if so that should be all you need to do. Now if things don't work, that's when you need to do the paranoid testing. That's when you really need to go and have a look at pretty much all your connections down here, everything you got soldered in. So this is where you've plugged it in, nothing's working, you're sure you got the EEPROM image correct, pretty sure the EEPROMs would be working if it was wired up correctly. That's when you've really got to start going through and checking the connections between basically all these address pins. I don't know if you have a look here, you can see how there's all these little lines running from these pins on the back. These are basically, that's basically A0, A1, A2, A3, A4, A5. Let me just check that's correct on my little label, and I'm not telling the wrong thing. Yeah, that's right. I mean, these are the address lines, A0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'll put a diagram up on the site so you can check them out as well. But you should only need to check this if things just aren't working, and that's where, like, A0 should be going through to this pin here. So first thing we're going to check is, whoops, hang on, back in continuity mode, this pin, here we go, that pin there. There you go, it's a bit hard to see. It's it's like one of those little maze puzzles you play as a kid. You just basically got to follow the lines. Then what I do is just make sure that it actually goes through to the socket. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it the fourth one up? 1, 2, 3, 4. Was it the fifth one up? I can't remember. Must have been the fifth one up. There we go. So we know there's a good connection there. If you so this is for you plug it in. You're sure you got everything wired up. You just don't know what's wrong. This is your paranoid testing coming down, basically checking, making sure that every single one of these pins at the bottom actually connects through to the actual socket connection over here. So all I was doing there is I was sticking basically 1 in the 5th pin there, 1 on the 1st pin there, and just making sure that the connection from the bottom right through to the underside of the socket and through up to here was okay. The other thing to do is just a quick visual inspection of your soldering work. So you might find, for instance, you may even have just missed one of these pins. That's a possibility. You may have a bad joint, something like that. So that's all stuff to check if it just doesn't work and you don't know why. So good luck. Hopefully everything works out, and yeah, then you can really enjoy playing some of those old classic games. See ya.